Behind every Hollywood icon lies a story the cameras never caught, one that reveals the person behind the persona. In 1958, on the sun-baked backlot of old Tucson studios, a young Angie Dickinson witnessed something quietly remarkable. It involved teen heartthrob Ricky Nelson, something so subtle, so genuine, that it stayed with her for over 6 decades. For more than 60 years, Angie kept that memory locked away. But what she saw on the set of Rio Bravo, the notes, the kindness, the moments no one else noticed, completely changed the way she viewed one of Hollywood's most beloved stars. The world knew Ricky Nelson as the chart-topping singer and television sensation. Angie saw something else. She saw Ricky Nelson, the human being. In that difference, it's about to change how you remember him too, because Ricky did something small, yet extraordinary, every single day on set. It wasn't for the spotlight. It wasn't for applause. But it transformed the entire film crew, and it still gives Angie chills to this day. So what was this quiet ritual? Why is Angie finally speaking about it now? Stay with us, yeah. Because what you're about to discover might just rewrite everything you thought you knew about Ricky Nelson. Back in 1958, old Tucson Studios was alive with the buzz of Hollywood magic. The set of Rio Bravo felt electric. Director Howard Hawks had assembled a dream cast. John Wayne, the legendary Duke of Westerns, Dean Martin, the crooner-turned-actor, then the newcomers Angie Dickinson and Ricky Nelson, to rising stars unknowingly stepping into film history. Angie was nervous. It was her big break, surrounded by giants of the screen. Every take was a test. Every glance from the director held the weight of a career. But it wasn't the cameras or the pressure of performance that had her heart racing. It was the fear of not belonging. Then Ricky Nelson walked onto the set at just 18. He was already an American sensation, gold records, screaming fans, his face on every newsstand. Most stars with that kind of fame brought ego with them. They came flanked by handlers, insulated from the crew, exuding untouchable confidence. But Ricky was different. He walked up to the grips. The lighting guys, the costume team, man shook their hands. No entourage, no airs, just Ricky, a teenager, thrilled to be shooting his first Western. And what he did next. That's the part that Angie Dickinson never forgot. Angie watched it all unfold with quiet awe. Here was a young man who could have coasted by on charm and fame, but instead, Ricky Nelson was asking the lighting crew about their rigs, chatted with stuntmen about their bruises and timing. He offered the same sincere attention to the director as he did to the assistant carrying cables. This wasn't just good manners. It was something deeper, an instinctive decency, kind of groundedness, that felt almost out of place in an industry built on ego. Director Howard Hawks, known for cultivating collaborative sets, encouraged this spirit. He believed that great films came not from hierarchy, but from harmony. He wanted his actors to listen to each other, to the crew, to the unspoken rhythm of the scene. Ricky, with his quiet humility and boundless curiosity, slipped right into that rhythm. While many stars disappeared into their trailers between takes, Ricky stayed behind. He'd wander the set, asking questions about lenses, lighting, blocking. Why does this shot feel more dramatic than the last one? Can I watch that stunt from closer? What's the difference between this mic and the boom? These weren't the questions of a celebrity trying to impress anyone. They were the questions of a student, eager to understand every piece of the machine he was now a part of. And as Angie's scenes with him drew closer, she found herself wondering, was this kid really? What was hiding behind the boy next door smile and the billboard hits? What she discovered would reshape not only her view of Ricky, but her entire approach to acting, because the first thing that truly struck her wasn't his talent, or even his looks. It was how naturally he walked through the world with grace and humility. In a business where even the smallest amount of success often warped people's behavior, Ricky was different. While others demanded special treatment or clung to their stardom like armor, Ricky did something that left the crew whispering behind his back but in admiration. It's not gossip. He treated every day on set like a masterclass, and every crew member like a professor. Picture it, Day 3 of filming. The Arizona sun is blazing, the crew is sweating, and a complicated multi-camera scene is being set up. Most actors would be cooling off in their air-conditioned trailers, resting their voices and sipping bottled water, but not Ricky. He was crouched beside the camera operator, asking about focal lengths and depth of field. It's not to take over, not to micromanage, but simply to understand. And Angie noticed it wasn't a one-time thing. It was a pattern. When the gaffers adjusted lighting, Ricky was there asking how they created those warm shadows. When the sound team checked their levels, he asked about the placement of hidden mics. He didn't just want to say his lines. He wanted to understand the art of filmmaking itself. That level of respect and curiosity was rare. But what made it extraordinary was that it came from him, a teen idol, with platinum records and screaming fans. And yet Ricky never once behaved like he was doing the movie a favor. He showed up early. He knew his lines. He'd already thought through his character's motivation before the director even asked. And when Howard Hawks gave him notes, Ricky leaned in, absorbing every word like it was sacred. This attitude changed the energy on set. Some actors walk in and raise tensions, throwing off the balance, demanding attention. But Ricky did the opposite. His quiet work ethic and deep respect for the craft inspired the people around him. The camera crew started experimenting more. Lighting team added flourishes they normally wouldn't because they knew Ricky would notice, he would care. The sound crew began staying late, fine-tuning levels and polishing mixes, not because they had to, but because Ricky cared enough to ask questions, to listen, to learn. His respect for their work motivated them to go the extra mile. Angie, still new to this world, found herself observing all of it with growing admiration. Here was an 18-year-old pop sensation, a household name, Alf, who could have easily walked onto that set and let his fame do the talking. But instead, Ricky Nelson was quietly proving something far more powerful, that he didn't just want to be taken seriously as an actor. He deserved to be. Not because he needed to win over critics or secure another headline, but because he respected the people he was working with far too much to give anything less than his very best. And then there were the quiet moments. The ones that never made it into the tabloids. Between takes, as conversations turned to weekend plans or idle gossip, Ricky tuned into something else. He noticed things. A tired grip with heavy shoulders. A stressed-out production assistant, prop master, trying to manage one too many details without a word. Ricky would offer a hand or a kind question. "You doing okay?" He'd lift something heavy, share a bottle of water. These weren't gestures for the spotlight, they were acts of quiet character, and the more Angie watched, the clearer it became. Ricky's humility wasn't a PR move, wasn't rehearsed or strategic. It was real. But perhaps the most impressive thing of all was how he carried the pressure. Everyone on set knew the stakes. Rio Bravo wasn't just another movie for Ricky, it was his cinematic debut, the bridge between teen idol and serious actor. One weak performance, one harsh review, and the media would write him off as another failed crossover. But instead of folding under that pressure, Ricky channeled it into quiet determination. He showed up prepared. He listened. He worked harder than anyone expected him to. And slowly, something clicked for Angie. This was what professionalism really looked like. It's not barking orders, not demanding attention, but earning respect through action, attitude, and the way you treat every single person around you. Watching Ricky, Angie realized she wasn't just learning how to navigate a film set. She was witnessing what it meant to be a star without ever losing your humanity. And then came the moment that took her breath away. It was 3 weeks into filming. Angie arrived early one morning and headed to her usual chair, expecting just another long day under the Arizona sun. But tucked into the seat was something unexpected. A small, neatly folded note with her name written in careful handwriting. She glanced around. No one seemed to be paying attention. Curious, she unfolded the paper. Inside was a short, heartfelt message. Ricky had written to praise her performance from the previous day, a scene they hadn't even shared. He thanked her for inspiring him, for showing him what true presence on screen looked like. At the bottom, he'd drawn a tiny doodle of a guitar. To anyone else, it might have seemed like simple professional courtesy. But Angie knew better. Ricky hadn't been required to watch that scene. He hadn't been prompted to say anything. Had simply taken the time to notice, to appreciate, and to let her know she mattered. And it wasn't a one-time gesture. Over the next few weeks, Angie began hearing similar stories. A lighting tech would find a note taped to his gear, thanking him for his consistency, A costume assistant who'd pulled a late-night fix would open a drawer to find a handwritten message praising her attention to detail. These weren't generic compliments. They were personal, thoughtful, specific. They proved one thing. Ricky saw everyone. And it wasn't just the notes. Ricky had developed what Angie came to think of as perfect timing, a kind of emotional awareness that let him step in at just the right moment. Whether it was lightening the mood when tensions rose, or offering encouragement when someone doubted themselves. He always seemed to know exactly what was needed, and exactly when to offer it. On those long, grueling 14-hour days when the heat pressed down and tempers ran thin, Ricky had an uncanny sense of when morale was fading. He didn't make grand speeches or demand attention. He'd simply pick up his guitar and begin to strum a soft, familiar tune. Not performing, not showing off, just creating a quiet soundtrack that soothed the edges of a hard day. Other times, he'd drop a perfectly timed joke, light, effortless, and just what the room needed to exhale. In the middle of chaos, his presence offered calm. These weren't strategies or rehearsed techniques. They were instinctual. They came from a place of genuine care, and that care started to ripple. Angie watched as something remarkable unfolded on set. Crew members who had once kept to themselves began helping one another without being asked. The assistant directors, often laser-focused on deadlines, started mentoring the younger crew with more patience. Even John Wayne, the Duke himself, famous for his no-nonsense attitude, was spotted more than once, chuckling and chatting with the newer actors, offering advice he usually kept to himself. It was as if Ricky had changed the energy of the set. A new message had taken hold. We're all in this together, in every role, no matter how small matters. One moment in particular sealed it for Angie. They were filming a difficult ensemble scene. Ow. The clouds refused to cooperate, throwing the lighting into constant flux. A nearby radio tower began interfering with the sound feed. And take after take fell apart for reasons nobody could quite fix. Frustration mounted. Voices grew sharper. The energy turned sour, but instead of retreating to the comfort of his trailer, Ricky walked straight into the storm. He didn't come with solutions, came with curiosity. He stood beside the sound engineer asking how interference worked and what could be done about it. He sat with the lighting team as they debated setups, genuinely interested in how natural light could be controlled. Not once did he offer empty suggestions. He simply listened, learned, and stood with them through it. And something shifted. What had started as a stressful, disjointed day slowly transformed into a collaborative problem-solving session. The air grew lighter, jokes returned, the team bonded. And by the time they finally got the shot, the mood was better than it had been at the start of the day. That's when it hit. Angie, this was leadership, not the kind that shouts orders from the top, but the kind that lifts everyone from within. Ricky wasn't trying to command respect. He was quietly earning it by being human, thoughtful, present. His empathy wasn't performative. It was powerful. It was contagious. Those simple, consistent gestures were doing more than improving a movie set. They were creating the kind of environment where greatness thrives. And for Angie, it became a kind of revelation. Watching Ricky work made her rethink what kind of actor, what kind of person she wanted to be. But as deeply moving as all those moments were, what stayed with her most wasn't public at all. It was something that happened just between the two of them. Week 4 of filming, scene that demanded vulnerability, intimacy, and razor-sharp timing. Angie and Ricky's characters had to navigate a quiet, emotionally loaded exchange, just the kind of scene where one misstep could unravel the entire tone. The pressure was real. The director was watching closely. The set was tense. And then, something unexpected happened. Would you like me to continue with how that breakthrough scene changed their relationship? how it left a lasting mark on Angie for years to come. They'd run through the scene multiple times, but something wasn't clicking. The lines were there, the blocking was right, but the emotional connection just wasn't. The dialogue felt hollow, the chemistry forced. Behind the camera, Hawks' silence grew heavier, his expression tightening with each failed take. And that's when Ricky did something that would stay with Angie forever. He didn't blame the script. He didn't try to overcompensate with extra emotion or shift focus to his own performance. Instead, in a quiet moment between takes, Ricky walked over to Hawks and politely asked for a few minutes alone with Angie. Not to rehearse lines. They both knew them cold, but to figure out what was missing. To dig deeper, together, and in that moment, Angie saw something that changed her understanding of what it meant to be a true scene partner. Ricky approached the conversation not as a star mentoring a newcomer, or even as an equal defending his interpretation. He came to her with curiosity. He asked what she thought the characters were feeling, not just what the dialogue said, but what was underneath it. The fears, the history, the longing. For 20 minutes, they sat off to the side, peeling back the emotional layers of the scene. They talked about their characters' backstories, how past wounds were shaping this moment, what their silences meant, and what was left unsaid. They didn't act. They explored. They built something between them that neither could have created. Alone, when they finally rolled again, something clicked. The words felt lived in. The pauses carried meaning. The chemistry between them wasn't forced. It was earned. When Hawks called cut, he smiled for the first time that day. That, he said, is what I was hoping for. From that moment on, something shifted. Between Angie and Ricky, they developed a quiet, shorthanded kind of creative rhythm that allowed them to play off one another instinctively. A glance between takes could signal a shift in energy. A small nod could mean they'd try a different beat. Their scene started to flow with a kind of easy magic. The kind that felt spontaneous, but had been deeply thought through. But their connection didn't. And when the cameras stopped rolling, during breaks, they'd find themselves deep in conversation, not about agents or gossip or upcoming gigs, but about craft, about acting, about intention. Ricky asked Angie about how she built her characters. She asked him how music influenced his understanding of rhythm and emotion. They became sounding boards for one another, honest, generous, and completely ego-free. What struck Angie most wasn't just Ricky's talent, was how he carried himself as the least experienced person on that legendary set. He never once tried to prove he belonged. He simply listened. He asked John Wayne about physical presence. To command a scene without speaking a word, he picked Dean Martin's brain about comedic timing and naturalistic delivery. He soaked up knowledge with the humility of someone who knew he had a long way to go, and the wisdom to admit it. And something amazing happened because of that humility. The veterans began to invest in him, not out of obligation, but because Ricky's eagerness to learn was infectious. Wayne started sharing subtle tricks, ways to convey authority with nothing but a glance or shift in posture. Martin opened up about the music and dialogue, the beats hidden in conversation that made scenes sing. Angie watched it all with admiration. Ricky's emotional intelligence wasn't just impressive, it was rare. He understood something that most actors, even seasoned ones, often missed. Asking for help doesn't make you weak. And his willingness to be open, truly open, made the entire cast want to see him succeed. Their friendship grew stronger with each shared scene and quiet moment between takes. Sometimes they'd find a secluded corner of the set just to talk, decompress, or sit in silence without the pressure of performance. There was no romantic spark, just something equally meaningful. A creative partnership rooted in honesty, respect, and mutual growth. Years later, Angie would look back on their time together not as an easy collaboration but as a true one. They challenged each other. They disagreed. They rewrote moments on the fly. But every adjustment, every note, every critique came from a place of total trust. And that trust in spoken, unshakable made all the difference. That foundation of friendship and creative respect would prove invaluable in the weeks ahead. as Angie and Ricky tackled some of the film's most emotionally demanding scenes. But it also revealed something even deeper, another layer to Ricky Nelson that left Angie even more moved by the young man behind the fame. Now, 65 years later, Angie Dickinson is finally sharing what those few transformative months on the Rio Bravo set truly meant to her, what they taught her about greatness, about legacy, and about what it really means to be a star in Hollywood. When people ask her about working with legends like John Wayne or Dean Martin, and they often do, she always speaks highly of their talent and presence. But when asked who influenced her most profoundly, her answer surprises them. Ricky. He was just 18. But the lessons he taught her about character, humility, and integrity are ones she still carries to this day. Ricky's quiet, thoughtful approach didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. The ripple effect of his presence followed Angie throughout her career. Inspired by him, she began adopting his philosophy, treating every crew member, every assistant, every behind-the-scenes contributor as vital to the creative process. Whether she was starring in gritty crime dramas like Point Blank or breaking barriers in television with Policewoman, Angie made it a point to know the people she worked with. She learned names. She asked about families. She took time to say thank you not just to the director or co-stars, but to the grips, the wardrobe team, the person serving coffee on a cold morning, as Angie puts it. Ricky showed her something few in Hollywood ever do, that professionalism isn't about distance or hierarchy. It's about connection. It's about building a set where everyone feels valued, not with grand speeches or empty flattery, but through quiet, consistent respect, through genuine interest in others, through kindness that expects nothing in return. And as her own fame grew, as she stepped into the spotlight in her own right, Angie credits Ricky's example with keeping her grounded, with reminding her that stardom is fleeting, but how you treat people, that's what lasts. Looking back now, she sees those days on Rio Bravo not just as a chapter in her filmography, but as a turning point. A moment when a teenage musician, new to movies but wise beyond his years, taught her the kind of lessons most spend a lifetime chasing. He never set out to be a mentor, but Ricky Nelson became one anyway, and in doing so, he left behind something more enduring than fame. He left behind a legacy of grace,